Greetings, students. This is Dr. Faith Acker, and this video is specifically for students of Southeastern Louisiana University. That's important because today I'll be talking about library resources, and if you're a student at another university, you may not have access to some of these same resources. Today I want to talk about library resources and how to find resources to use in some of your literature papers. Not all, but some. First thing you'll want to do is go to the Southeastern Louisiana University homepage and use the drop-down menu under Academics to go to the library. It's important to me that you learn to use the library website because it offers a lot of valuable materials that you won't be able to find with a simple Google search. The library databases are more likely to be peer-reviewed, although you'll still have to double-check, and therefore they're more reliable at a scientific level. Although there are many scholarly resources you can find on Google, you'll need to do more of the collection of those and discernment between scholarly and popular sources yourself. And also, if you find an appropriate scholarly source, you may find that the Google link goes to a website that asks you to pay for it. Southeastern subscribes to a huge number of academic databases, and as a student at Southeastern, you yourself are given access to these databases for free. Well, it comes out of some of your fees. So, when you start a new research project, use the university resources to make sure that you're making use of sources that your professor is more likely to accept and approve within the parameters of any given assignment. To some extent, these are vetted by the college, but the librarians here can't know all the details of every assignment that every student at Southeastern is given. So if you're not sure whether a source will work, it's a good idea to contact your instructor to double check that the particular text you've chosen would work with your instructor's rubric. If you have questions and you'd like to talk to a librarian about them, they have contact details right here all down this side of the screen. You can live chat with them. I've done it myself and it's wonderful. You can also email, text, or call them, and they are available around the clock for your assistance. They get paid to support you, so use them as a valuable resource that is part of your tuition and fees. Now that I've given you all those caveats, let's go ahead and look at some of the ways you could search this library website if you have a new essay. Today I'll be pretending that I'm writing an essay on devotional allusions in the poetry of Henry Vaughan, who is an underappreciated Renaissance poet. I have a number of different ways I can look for information. The quick search, which is the tab that the library webpage opens to, and I'll also show you how to use some articles and databases and specific subject research guides to find more information if the quick search doesn't give you quite enough. The quick search lets you search by keyword, title, or author. Now, although Henry Vaughan is an author, I don't want to read the works that he's written. We are going to assume that I've already read one of his poems. Instead, I want to leave this on a keyword search because I want to search for works where Henry Vaughan is a core topic within my text. And in this instance, because I want to make sure that my results are scholarly, I only want to use peer-reviewed sources. It actually doesn't mean peer-reviewed. You've probably done peer review yourselves, where you traded paper in an English class and you gave one another criticism. This isn't just papers that have been peer-reviewed, but it's papers that have been blind peer-reviewed, which means that the reviewers don't know who wrote each paper. The general idea is that if an undergraduate wrote a paper that was good enough to compete with the best paper written by the most well-respected scholar, the reviewer receiving the two papers blind would evaluate each paper only on its own merits and would publish only the paper or papers that were valuable to the field, rather than being entranced or even intimidated by the prestigious name of the scholar and picking that paper over the name of an unknown scholar. So peer review helps us see that the sources that we've looked at have been vetted by other scholars. In the sciences, peer review can sometimes also mean that an experiment has been reproduced or analyzed by other scientists to make sure there aren't any major errors in the way that the experiment is laid out, and often to make sure that the experiment itself is reproducible, which is really important. Other options you have here are things that are available in the library collection, which means that those are texts that our library already has on its shelves. But you could, if you wanted, choose only to have results that come in full text. And what that would mean is that somehow the library subscribes to the full text of the article. You won't see the article and want to read it and not be able to get to it. Here are my search results for a basic search on Henry Vaughan. Now, I haven't narrowed this down to anything like Henry Vaughan and devotionals. So let's do that because 500 results is really quite a lot. Oh, now I only have 3 results. One thing you'll learn as you begin to use the library searches is that you'll need to do a lot of different experimentation. Henry Vaughan devotion doesn't work at all. Henry Vaughan devotional only gives me 3 results. So I'm going to start with just Henry Vaughan and use some other limiting factors to narrow my search down. But in general, expect to have to search 5 or 6 different keywords or combinations of keywords to come up with results that are particularly applicable to your own scholarship. I already have scholarly peer-reviewed journals checked down here. The other thing I want to do, I noticed that some of these results are from the 1800s, which seems a little bit outdated to me. So I'm only going to look at results that were produced in the 21st century. And I only have 160 results. I could now limit to full text if I wanted. And I also can limit to types of sources. So academic journals is going to be scholarly works, exactly the type of article that I want to include. But I can also look at reviews, which will actually not be reviews of Henry Vaughan. It will be reviews of editions of Henry Vaughan's works or reviews of books written about Henry Vaughan, so that's not going to be very useful to me. And there might, in other instances, be other types of source, such as a newspaper or a magazine article. I don't have any of those in my results today because I've already checked peer-reviewed, and magazines and newspapers don't get peer-reviewed because of how quickly they need to go to press. From this page, I can access a lot of PDFs of full articles. I still have some reviews, so I'm going to ignore those. But I also can click on any time it says PDF full text. I can click on the full text of a particular article. It will make me log into my account, which is where this will stop being useful if you are not actually a student at Southeastern. And then I have a PDF of the article that I can just download directly onto my computer to read at my own convenience. One thing you'll need to note about these PDFs is that they don't always have the full information. So on this particular one, once I download it, I won't know very much except the title. So it's a good idea to use the detailed record to make sure that you have all the information that you need when it comes time to write your works cited entry. Let's go back to the search results for a moment. Here I have an article on images of time and eternity in the religious poetry of Henry Vaughan. Notice that I've had to scroll down a little bit to find something that relates to my theme of devotion. And the reason my devotion search didn't work earlier is because they've used the word religious instead of devotional. I can do 2 things. I can look at this source to see if there's a downloadable PDF on Project Muse, which there usually is. Alternately, I can click on the article's title and it will take me to show me the catalog entry at Southeastern University for this article. The catalog entry is important for 2 reasons. In the first place, the information that it gives here is all the information that I will need to accurately cite this article. It tells me the title, the author, the container, the volume and issue, the pages on which it appears, and all the publication details. Perhaps most importantly, it contains a description, also sometimes called an abstract, and this description right here gives me an overview of the article. You'll see if you look at this that the article itself is 15 pages long, and that could take me up to an hour to read, particularly if it's very dense. The abstract or description that the library gives will often summarize the main points of the article, and while you don't want to use that summary in your eventual paper, it will help you decide whether the paper itself is worth reading. You could then view the record at Project Muse or whatever source it happens to link to. One great thing about Project Muse is that much of the information from this library catalog will be on the first page of the PDF itself. All the information you need to cite the article will also be right here available for your consultation. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll get to see the actual essay. And one of the reasons it looks so weird on this page is because the pages are printed exactly the same way as they appear in the printed version of this journal, which is cropped to a much smaller size than a normal page size to make sure that the electronic version and the print version match exactly in terms of pages. Let's go back to the main library website. We've just done the quick search, but the library subscribes to many articles and databases as well as books that might not be very easy to find. Maybe you're just overwhelmed by the number of results that come back through the quick search. So another thing that you can think about is looking at the research guides that the library publishes to help you with research in particular subjects. One thing that I noticed when I was working on my Henry Vaughan is that some of the results that I got back weren't actually Henry Vaughan the devotional poet. There are other writers who are there are other people who have been named Henry Vaughan, and so in addition to getting back sources about Henry Vaughan the poet, I also got back some materials about Henry Vaughan, a historian and engineer, who's not the same person at all. Using the research guides will often make it easier to filter out some of these less relevant sources right away. If you click on research guides, you can search by a topic, but you can also just browse the library guides by subject. English and history are both arts and humanities sources, but there are also library guides designed specifically for education, science, the social sciences, and even such specific fields as nursing. If I go to arts and humanities, I may want to go down and look just at English literature. If I click on English literature, it takes me to the English literature subject guide, which has a bunch of different categories. They have top 10 resources, which are not all library resources. Some of them are things like the Southeastern Writing Center. If you're working on a project that wants you to look at a large survey of literature from a specific field, you might find the bibliographies and biographies useful. These are all resources that Southeastern has. Most of these are books. You can tell that because they give you the call number right afterwards. Most of these are listed as reference stacks, which means you won't be able to take them out of the building, unfortunately. One of these is also an online resource, so you could use that to look up biographical information about your authors. Another option is to look at the indexes and databases. So these are recommended English literature databases for different literary resources you could use depending upon your particular project. The library also has a number of handbooks, and these are books that are designed to give you introductory material that will complement your study of a particular writer or field within literature. These would be most useful if you were taking a literature course rather than a writing course, so they might be something you should come back to when you get to a second level English class. And finally, there are links to a lot of encyclopedias, dictionaries, and guides. General guides to literature, so this would be a list of reference sources you could use, collections of literary criticism, people who have written analyses and responses to various literary texts in different fields. And then at the bottom, there are some encyclopedias and dictionaries. The Oxford English Dictionary is a great source to use if you'd like to know how long a word has been used in a particular way and whether the word's definition has changed over a larger period of time. The Oxford Dictionary of Literary Terms will give you terms about stories like plot and pace, and even things like metaphor, words that you're more likely to need to use academically in an analysis essay to describe different things the text is doing itself. Finally, if we go back to the main library page, the last thing I want to introduce you to is articles and databases. These work much like the quick search, and again, they're organized by subject because the database that you might want to use to find information on nanoparticles is not quite the same as the database you might want to use to find out information on Shakespeare or Henry Vaughan. So we would come to the databases by subject and select English. Again, you could use this for any topic, and they've pulled the huge number of databases to which the library subscribes and prioritized the ones that will be most useful for a student of English literature. There are also some that are listed multiple times. So up here we have books at JSTOR and down here we have JSTOR. But you should be able, if you go to JSTOR, usually you'll be able to search both of them at once. Most of these sources will primarily give you access to peer-reviewed sources, although there are a few that won't. Many of them will also prioritize full text. JSTOR and Project Muse are two of my favorites because they have a large number of full text articles that you can read directly online. In addition, they have some other ones that perhaps aren't quite as essential, but still could be valuable listed at the bottom under other resources. This still isn't the whole number of databases that Southeastern subscribes to, but the majority of these are ones that they have found useful to English students in the past. With most of these, the search will work very similarly to the search we did at the beginning of this video for the quick search. You'll click on JSTOR Advanced Search. You can also do a basic search, and we could type in Henry Vaughan. When they've finished their search, I have 34,000 results, and one of the ways I could limit these is by only looking for results that have Henry Vaughan's two names together. Otherwise, I'm likely to get some that aren't on my Henry Vaughan the poet. Again, one thing I can also do is limit to Henry Vaughan and poet or devotional, something else like that, until I can get my search down to a manageable number of results. Here I have some book chapters from Henry Vaughan The Unfolding Vision, and if I scroll down far enough, I'll also have some results from journal articles. Again, with any of these, I can choose to download the PDF, but I can also click on the title and learn some important details about that particular article. Here I've clicked on Recent Studies in Henry Vaughan, and right here on the left I can see the abstract to decide whether this would be useful to my own research or work. If I do think it would be useful, I can go back to the top, download the PDF, and save it to read or cite later. This has been a quick overview of library databases and library resources here at Southeastern University. We started on the home page, we moved to academics and the library, and we looked at quick search, at articles and databases, and at some of the research guides.